take a look at another repair method that involves using the three main tools to identify the problem areas, but we'll use some other techniques to repair them. We're going to start by opening up this surfacing repair SC doc. And if we take a look at it, we can see it's transparent, which is the first indication that it's not a clean, solid model. And again, in the tree, the list, structure tree contains a list of surfaces. There isn't a solid here. So the first thing that we're going to want to do is go to our repair tab and run the stitch tool. By clicking on it, it'll automatically search through the model for surfaces that are sharing edges. One stitchable loop of edges, and we'll go ahead and click the check mark, and we'll see what we get as a result. We can see from the structure tree we have one surface, and that's perfect. And we'll go ahead and we'll take a look at the gaps. Now, we see that there's a gap here, and one thing we usually recommend is to take a close look at these gaps. And we have this nice zoom to fit option, which will zoom right in on it. And once we're in there, if we go ahead and spin the model around, we can tell that this is a really bad face. It's kind of crisscrossing, looks like maybe intersecting itself. This is something that the tool is going to have a lot of trouble fixing, and if I go ahead and click the check mark and even try to fix it, we'll end up seeing that it isn't able to. It didn't really make the geometry any better, and just in case it somehow made it even worse, I'm going to go ahead and undo back before it attempted to fix that gap, and I'm just going to escape out of the gaps tool. What I want to do is eliminate this surface completely. So I'm just simply going to click it by clicking it, and then right-click delete or press delete on the keyboard. And we'll see that that surface or that face is now completely gone. Now, if we take a look at the remaining missing face that's there, this edge looks pretty clean, very easy to select. But this edge here does not look clean at all. It's very zigzag. This one I can select and doesn't look that bad, but here we've got multiple edges. I even have trouble selecting it right here, which kind of gives me an indication in a few different areas that this is a bad edge. And I want a nice clean edge along here. So the way to nicely clean and trim that up is with our split face tool. Now, the tool guides for the split face tool are going to guide me through the steps of the tool. The first one is to click a face to be split. And we don't just want to click this one. So I can hold down the control key, and that will toggle back to the first tool guide. And I can add an additional face to my selection. Now, there's a number of different options to split with. And here, the first one is UV cutter point. And if I hover over the edge between them, you'll see that it's just giving me a nice perpendicular line. And I'm just going to split it off with enough room to make sure that I've removed any bad geometry that's there. And now we'll go ahead and switch back to our select tool. And I'm going to select these two faces. I can do them individually or control select both of them and then press the delete key. Now, when it comes to patching these in, what I want to do is I want to see if there's tangency between any of these faces here. So in our measure tab, we have this tool called stripes, and I could either box select or even individually select the faces that I want to look at. And the way this tool works, I could change the density of it, maybe make these lines a little bigger, make the lines a little smaller to get a better idea of the geometry here. Now, what these lines tell me, if I look inside a face, anything that's straight or nice and smooth, kind of like over here, is clean. Any areas where it gets a little zigzaggy in a face, it means there may be something wrong with that face. Now, this model was imported in, and this was how the geometry was created, so the need to smooth this out might not be there. But I do want to point out that if we look at the edge between some of these faces, we could see a little stagger here. And what that stagger indicates is that this face and the face next to it are not actually tangent. Over here, they're close to tangent, but there is a little step in between them. You can see it gets worse and worse. So we need the two stripes on either side of the edge to meet up to show that they're actually tangent. And depending on the view orientation we're in here, we actually see we have a nice tangency to the faces above, and On this side here, we do have some nice clean tangency. So this is a nice way to tell whether or not you need to drive the tangency of the model, because it's probably not as important over here because it doesn't actually exist everywhere else in the model. Over here, it might be a little more important. The reason I bring this up is because the last tool we're going to use, if we run gaps again, no gaps in the model because we deleted it, but missing faces is going to find these, and with the patch option of missing faces, there's no tangency driven in the model. So we will see this patch in the model, but we might want to go ahead and use the stripes tool. And here I could do the box select, as I mentioned, to grab a group of faces to add those to the selection. And the two faces that we patched in is this one here and this one here. And we can see that we don't really have tangency at all between these. So if we want to actually drive that tangency, I can either undo, I can simply select these two faces and delete them. And our fill tool, if I turn it on first without anything selected, allows me to use this patch blend option. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to double click on the loop of edges that I want to patch around. And using the Alt key, I'm going to go ahead and select the faces around this face where I want to drive tangency as best as possible. And when I click the check mark to patch it in, it'll try to use those faces around it to drive tangency. And when I go ahead and show the stripes tool, we see that it's much closer than it was before. And it's going to try to fit it within the best of its ability. There's probably a reason that face was missing in the first place. If we do the same thing with the, turn on the stripes fill tool first, if we select these faces that we want to drive the tangency to, patch blend on and click the check mark, go ahead and select these faces again, turn on the stripes tool, and here that new face that we put in, we can see the tangency between the adjacent faces is much closer. This was the face that we pasted in. You could see the actual tangency between these faces. So within the restrictions of the geometry, we do have the ability to drive tangency as close as we can, given the constraints of the geometry there. And we try to keep each individual face nice and smooth. So here we have a nice clean solid which can be exported or worked with moving forward.